Dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel. On this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. We have lots of very interesting details, and first let's talk about the western Avdiivka direction. As you can see, we have additional gains on the ground, lots of icons and so on. According to information we received from pro-Ukrainian mappers, the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to improve their positions and to establish complete control over the village of Voshod. So this territory was captured by the Russians. During the previous few days we were talking that the Russians captured Sokol, and a few days after the Russians captured Voshod. So as you can see, the Russians are moving very fast, and according to pro-Ukrainian mappers, the Russians managed to reach this tree line and this intersection of the tree lines in the south of Voshod and to the northwest of Novoselivka, Persha. So this is the edge Russian positions in this direction. Obviously we can see that the main Russian goal and the things that the Russians are trying to establish control over, to achieve, is to establish complete control over these three lines. Because if the Russians are able to do this, then first of all they will be able to cut and to establish physical fire and physical control over the main supply roads that goes from Novoselivka, Persha towards the mainland, more precisely to the village of Zhelanne. So once again, summarizing everything, this is the main supply road that Ukrainians still have possibilities to use. This main supply road is protected by this fortification area, by this stronghold, but if the Russians are able to get there, this supply road will be under complete Russian fire control, and the distance from possible Russian positions and the road itself is less than 1.5 kilometers. So this is the main goal of the Russians in this direction. As you can see, the Russians are not trying and are not planning to storm Novoselivka, Persha. First of all, the Russians are trying to cut the main supply roads and to encircle, to create a cauldron, and to force the Ukrainians either to fall back or to surrender if they're being encircled by the Russians. During these upcoming 24 hours, we are expecting additional progress of the armored force of Russian Federation, of course, in the southern and southwestern part of Novoselivka, Persha, because from this area, from this direction, the Russians also need to establish complete fire control over the road that goes from Novoselivka, Persha to Mezhova. Without this control, the Ukrainians still will have possibilities for evacuation, rotation, and many other different things. As for Novoselivka, Persha, as you can see, we have significant number of geolocations, and most of them were about how the Russians were hunting and attacking the Ukrainian armored vehicles and personnel carriers inside of the village and in the vicinity. So which confirms that the situation there is very critical. On the other hand, we continue receiving updates from the western part of Karlovka Water Reservoir of how the Russians were hunting and destroying the Ukrainian armored vehicles and positions in the villages of Zhelanne and Novozhelanne as well. So the main supply roads, the main evacuation roads are under complete Russian control, and the situation for the Ukrainians is very poor and very bad. Now let's move further in direction of progress to the northern part of Sokol. We still haven't received any updates about Yevgeniivka, so most likely the Ukrainians still save this territory, save control over this territory. But on the other hand, we see that the Russians continue moving in direction of progress, and as a result of clashes during the previous night and during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to capture additional tree line and to get as close as possible to the village itself. Also, we expect that during upcoming 24 hours, the Russians will continue moving along the railways towards the same village as well. So this is the current situation, and let's see what is going to be next. Now let's move to New York Toretsk agglomeration. We received a lot of very interesting details and updates from this territory. And first, let's take a look at this video. I'll remind you that according to information we have, this video was published yesterday in the evening by pro-Ukrainian sources, and the author of this video reported that in this video we can see how the Ukrainians were bombing the Russian positions. And one of the episodes that we might find in this video took place in the vicinity of this building. And based on this video, a lot of mappers, based on this statement, based on this video, based on the coordinates, most of the mappers have adjusted their map, including pro-Russian mappers. As you can see, according to this map, for example, the Russians managed to capture significant territories like this forest and to answer this high-rise, this stronghold as well. According to neutral mappers, the Russians managed to improve their positions as well, and of course this information was confirmed by pro-Ukrainian mappers deep state. But today, in the morning of the 4th of July of 2024, the Russian sources reported that the Ukrainians made a mistake when they published this video. The Russians reported that there are no Russians inside of this area, that in this video we can see not the bombing of Russian forces inside of this stronghold, but how the Russians were bombing the Ukrainian forces inside of this area. So based on this, we are not, for now, we're not planning to adjust the map. I'm talking about the yellow or red color. We have adjusted gray zone or contested area, the area that we received lots of updates from different reliable mappers, but without geolocations confirming this. So we have increased this territory, but for now we are going to wait for additional updates about the stronghold, whether the Russians managed to answer or not. Anyway, summarizing the reports about different mappers, the Russians at least managed to answer University Street, this one, and to capture at least one high-rise building. So let's wait for additional updates. Obviously, if this information is correct, during the next day, during this day, upcoming day, we are going to receive additional confirmation, including geolocated one. Now let's move further. In triangle between Druzhba, Mayorsk and Azaryanovka, also according to pro-Ukrainian mappers, the Russians managed to improve their positions and to almost force the Ukrainians to fall back from the Russian side of Seversky Donetsk-Donbass Canal. There is just one stronghold left in this area, and the Russians probably will try to capture this territory as soon as possible. Now let's move further. We got a very interesting video from Klishchevka. In this video, for example, we can see the Ukrainian attempts of 93rd Mechanized Brigade Air Mobile Brigade or Assault Brigade to counterattack the Russian positions in the southern part of Klishchevka. In this video, you can see how the Ukrainians were clearing the territory. For now, we're not going to adjust the map because the author of the video who published the video reported that he doesn't know the exact date when this situation happened, because this counterattack and this clearing operation could take place, let's say, in the beginning of June, and after that the Ukrainians lost their position. So for now we're going to keep the area as is. Now let's move further. We're going to move to southern Kupiansk direction, and today we got first reports. We started receiving first reports that the Russians entered Makeivka, that they managed to capture a few buildings. More precisely, the source reported that the Russians entered Makeivka yesterday and captured a few buildings yesterday, but before night came, the Russians abandoned their positions and returned, let's say, to the mainland and to the, let's say, more reliable positions. But when the 4th of July started, the Russians entered the village once again, and as I understand, during the upcoming day, they will try to dig in deeper and to make everything they can, but not to fall back from this territory before upcoming night. So, as I understand, on the 4th of July, today, the Russians began the real clearing operation of the village, and most likely during the next few days, they will complete this mission. As for the northern Kupiansk direction, we haven't received anything. The only interesting report we got from the Ukrainian sources that there are lots of very reliable military experts and just the people on the ground who reported that they currently today, as starting of today, they start having some doubts whether the Ukrainians are able to hold Kupiansk at all, or they will be forced to fall back from this territory as well. So, as I understand, very difficult situation in this area either for the Ukrainians. Now let's move to Kharkiv direction. We have a few updates from this territory. The Russians reported that they continue offensive operation, assault operation in the citadel, in the Vovchansk citadel. During the previous night, the Russians managed to improve their positions, but without any clarification what does it mean, the improvements of position, whether the Russians managed to capture additional high-rise building or something else. So for now, we don't have, let's say, more details, so let's wait. But we continue, in the third day in a row, we continue receiving reports about additional Russian progress to the east of the village of Burgovatka. And according to information we have, the Russians managed to bring additional forces in this area and to increase the foothold on this side of Seversky Donetsk River for additional few kilometers or meters or something like this. For now, we still haven't received any specifications, any clarifications where exactly the Russians cross Seversky Donetsk River, how many soldiers they have here, and what kind of foothold they have here as well. So anyway, let's wait for a little bit more, because sooner or later, if this information is correct, we're going to start receiving the videos with FPV drones, or maybe with artillery strikes, or maybe even with the Russian soldiers, which will give us the right to correct the map, to adjust the map. As for Kharkiv, today we got additional video of how the Russians attacked, the consequences of another Russian attack, another Russian use of FAB-500. I'll remind you that just yesterday the head of military authorities of Kharkiv reported that from now on the Russians have possibilities, and they know how to attack every single square kilometer of Kharkiv with FAB. So this, for now, Kharkiv is no longer a safe and secured area for the Ukrainian military authorities and military forces. Now let's move to Zolochiv direction. As you can see, we have lots of geolocations from this territory. First, let's start with the report of Deep State. According to them, the village by the name of Sotninsky Kazachok was captured by the Russians completely. This territory from now on is under complete Russian control. For now, we are not going to change the color of map because we haven't received any geolocations confirming this. But anyway, according to Deep State, this village was captured. Also, as you can see, we got a lot of videos of how the Russians were bombing the Ukrainian positions in this area. Lots of geolocations, lots of artillery strikes. These videos reminds us something like beginning or artillery preparation before the beginning of the ground operation. So probably during July, the Russians, maybe before the NATO summit, maybe before the 9th and 10th of July, the Russians will launch, or let's say limited offensive operation in this direction with the purpose to establish control over some villages like Basova, Adnorobovka, Ivansky, Okip, Chervona Zorya, Udy. So as you can see, these villages are very small, so it's not a very big problem for the Russians to capture them. But on the other hand, we're going to receive a lot of updates with different videos, with different Russian flags, which will also can ruin the Ukrainian reputation during the NATO summit and can change the plans of the Western sponsors of Ukraine. Maybe something like this. Maybe these are the plans that the Russians are planning to implement during the next few days. As for political events, probably the most important is that Kiev, probably the first American F-16 fighters will be delivered to Ukraine in July of this year. So during the next 20 days, probably the Ukrainians are going to receive the first F-16s, and probably this decision will be announced also during the NATO summit in Washington, and maybe then the Ukrainians will get the real dates, and it will be, let's say, it will be announced for people, for media, so everybody will understand that the next stage of the special military operation has started. Furthermore, we got additional report that Ukraine is going to receive additional military package for 2.2 billion from the United States of America, and this package will include significant number of air defense missiles because this is currently the biggest problem for the Ukraine. And we have report that Tucker Carlson announced an interview with Zelensky, and most likely during this interview Zelensky will try to answer Putin the questions, everything about the possible peace and about Putin's peace proposal and many other things. Obviously, this interview is going to be very interesting as well. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel. Put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.